Joe, first things first, how are you? The fans will be keen to know how you are at the moment.
Yeah, good. Trying to live the most normal life I can, which is obviously difficult when you can't go to work and can't do what you love doing. So it has been a bit difficult to get my head around at first, but I think it's given me an opportunity to do things that I would never normally do in the football season. So just trying to make the best of it, I think.
You're one of the first players that we've had a chance to talk to since lockdown. As a group of players, have you? I know obviously you're put in two camps at Bristol City as well, but have you kept in touch with each other? How have you kept yourselves going?
Yeah, I think definitely towards the start when there was a more serious chance of us coming back to play, and obviously you do things in with the idea that you're going to come back and play, and we did a lot of analysis on opposition and a few physical challenges to keep ourselves competitive. So I think it was easier at the start, and then obviously as it's gone on, the chances of us coming back were obviously slimmer and slimmer. But I'll always keep in contact with some of the lads that I've played with this year because they're friends as well as teammates this year. So we've stayed in contact, but obviously now the season's finished, it's sort of my ex-teammates, which is sad because you obviously don't get a chance to say goodbye to people, and that's been probably the worst part about this for me.
We'll come to all of that, but fitness, through this period as a player, is it very hard to maintain that at any sort of level? Because obviously there's a fitness that you will have naturally, but you and I both know match fitness is a different level, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think obviously the amount of time that we've had off, no one would have ever had this amount of time off before, probably ever will, or hopefully never will, because I definitely don't want to have this much time away from football again. But I think it's just important to get the balance right between resting and preparing for next season in that regard, and obviously working hard to get fit for when we do come back. But I think the difficult thing is we don't really have a date or anything. Usually in the summer, you've obviously got a month off or 2 months off, and you've got a date for when you need to be at your maximum for. Whereas at the minute, it's obviously a bit all up in the air, which is understandable, but it moves the goalposts a little bit. So I think you've just got to sort of maintain that fitness and try to do other things that instead of just running around the roads and stuff, try and play a bit of tennis, which I've been doing, and a few sessions with lads. I'm just trying to improve in areas that I've never really had a chance to improve on. Trying to improve the strength aspect of my game in order to be the best I can next season.
And it must be strange because you're Bristol City teammates, a day or two away from playing, but because of the contract situation, that's not going to be you.
Yeah, even more of a kick in the teeth, I think, because obviously the club that I'm contracted to, and not the club that I've been at for a while, but I'll probably watch their game on Saturday, and they've been back in training for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So it does make it difficult because I'd love to be in that position, but equally I can't have it all. I've had a brilliant season this year, and where I've learned a lot, and I feel like I've improved. So I think it would be greedy of me to want to play for Bristol City as well, which is obviously what I would want to do. But it's understandable that they're the rules, and I've just got to make the best of it, like I said.
Just a final question about now, COVID and the regulations around it. Does that cover you in terms of training? Or are you training well away from the first
Yeah,
year?
so we can't even go back into training because obviously the testing costs, they've been probably well documented. But how much clubs will be spending on testing players, and Bristol City in particular spent a lot of money on that, and they've got reduced numbers of staff in. So they obviously don't want us back in when we can't play just to do training. So I found obviously we've got quite a lot of players on loan, so there's a few lads who live by me that we've been doing sort of some sessions down on the grass down by me, which has helped keep me a bit more motivated, I think, because I think when you've got other people that are in the same position as you, then it always helps. But yeah, I've tried to stay as safe as possible, but to do as much as possible, I think, and that's the balance I think everyone's trying to find.
I know you'd had previously good seasons at the likes of Cheltenham and that, but you must have felt this year, obviously what also happened from the international point of view, it had been a big season for you, and to have lost, know it's all for the right reasons, but to have lost the last 3 months must have been difficult to take, because you could have gone through in that and you'd have hoped to, this time about now, be talking about being involved in an international squad.
Yeah, and I mean, the key message from my end is that hopefully I still get that opportunity next year. I mean, of course, it was maybe a better opportunity because some people were injured, etc. And obviously I'd come off a pretty decent season, so I felt like I was in a good place to go into this summer. But it just gives me more motivation for next year now that I need to have another good season in order to be in the plans, and then to kick on next summer, which is obviously my objective. So I think it's obviously disappointed that it hasn't been this summer, but I think if you look, I've just got to look at the positive aspect of it and sort of see it as another opportunity to have a good year next year. And like I said, go into next summer with the same momentum that hopefully I would have gone into this summer with. But yeah, frustrating for sure to have had a season that I really, really enjoyed. You know, probably, well, definitely the most enjoyable season of my career. To be cut short is frustrating, but I think I'd definitely be a little bit more miserable if I hadn't had a decent season, or we were scrapping down the bottom, or I hadn't played so much, which was I had done in previous seasons. So I think I have been lucky that this has happened at a time when I can feel fairly happy. I know it's dangerous to be happy sometimes in football, but you know, fairly positive about the past season, which I think has helped me in this past few months also.
Talk about the move to Lincoln. I know we've done this in past sort of radio interviews, but some fans might not have heard some of this. But you know, how did the move come about? Because from memory, you were suddenly a Lincoln player. I don't remember there being a lot of. There's a little bit in the papers, and obviously us speculating. There wasn't a huge amount. It came across as a pretty quick deal.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that there was nothing in the papers and stuff probably tells you that not a lot of people were that aware of me, I would say. I mean, I hadn't had been major that had gone on in my career before. You know, I'm still a young player who not a lot of people knew about. Well, probably most. I don't think there'd be any Lincoln fans that knew me before this season. And they'd be quite right because I hadn't done anything that would sort of been brought to their attention. I played against Lincoln in the past, but certainly not anyone that fans would have been that excited about signing for their team, which is completely understandable. And I think it was just in the summer, just a relief to get it sorted because I almost joined last January, and obviously the club were in League Two, and that was pretty close. I thought that was going to get done, and then Bristol City didn't want to let me go because they needed me for cover, etc., which was again completely understandable because they didn't have too many midfielders, and I played in the FA Cup and stuff and did okay, but unfortunately the midfielders were made of titanium last year, I think, and they didn't get injured at all. So I was just sort of sat around, just sort of featured here and there, but nothing too regularly. So I think when I had the opportunity to join Lincoln last summer, it was about this time last year, when it got sorted, which is crazy, really. I jumped at the chance, and I knew it was always going to be an opportunity for me to play football, and that's all you can ask as a young player.
In that season, two management teams. First of all, the Cowleys. What were they like to work with up until I think probably just the end of August, early September?
Yeah, I mean, I loved them. You know, I knew exactly what they were about from the moment that I joined, really, and I think I appreciate that sort of management where they just love football and they're winners, and just the intensity that they bring every day is something that I felt I could work really well with, and I think that was evident from the moment I walked in. You know, I learnt a lot from them in the first, I think it was probably only 4 or 5 months that I had them, but I think they left a big impression on me, which I think it takes a really good management team to do in such a short space of time. And you know, I'll be thankful for them for the opportunity that they gave me, because they took a chance on me. Like I said before, you know, there weren't clubs queuing up for me in the summer. I only really had one option, especially in League One, and it was Lincoln. So, like I said, I'll always be thankful for them to have given me the opportunity to play for Lincoln, and also to the gaffer who came in, because I have no bad words to say about him either. I got on really well with him. Probably a different style of management and a different style of football, but I think as a young player, when you can have two great coaches in one season, I think it just helps you learn so much. And that's, I think, looking back on it, has been a real benefit of this season, the fact that I've worked with two great coaches, and the sort of things that I'll take away from them, they've helped me improve my game with.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Michael Appleton. A lot of players that I talked to talk about his coaching sessions, talk about the coaching you do up at the training ground with them, which clearly we as journalists and the fans don't get to see, and say it's amongst the best they've had in their career with him.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm lucky that I've had, my manager at Bristol City. I think there's a lot of similarities between him and the gaffer at Lincoln now. In fact, they're very hands-on coaches, fantastic sessions, enjoyable sessions. And I think as a player, you feel like you're getting better, which is not always the case. And I think a lot of players will tell you that they don't necessarily have managers who make them better players. And especially for me, I think that's something that I want in a coach. And to have had that, like I said, with 2 coaches in one season has been a real positive for me.
And what do you make of the young players? I say young, they're only maybe a year or 2 younger than you, but, the likes of Scully who's come in, Teo who came in the January window. It was a big changeover, wasn't there? And it was a much younger squad. What do you know what it's expected of you as a young player to be able to perform in League One? Do you think they've got it in them in the coming seasons to step up to that level?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think like you alluded to, you've seen in glimpses that they've got real quality, and people like Scully and Teo. I mean, Teo's played games in the Championship, so you've got a bit of a mixture of lads who are sort of come down from bigger clubs in Scully and Teo, who are just making their first sort of waves in the men's game. And obviously got Ellis as well, who's who I believe could be Lincoln's midfielder for the next 5 years, and I hope he is, and I hope he takes that opportunity, because I think he's definitely more than good enough. Obviously Azza as well, my mate who I've lived with the past year, was obviously unlucky didn't get as many opportunities as he would have liked this year, but I think sort of being there under Erds, and Erds a Welsh international who's played in the Premier League, and I think Azza probably would have been disappointed to have only played however many games he did, but I think he would have learnt a lot from Erds this year, and hopefully he can take that into the next few years and be Lincoln's right back, because there's definitely players there good enough to be Lincoln players for the next however many years.
And do you think this is the way forward for players like yourself, in Championship or in maybe lower Premier League clubs, to come down to League One to get a full season and get that experience of playing in front of big crowds?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's proper football at the end of the day, and I think I've always said to Ellis is that the fact that he's lucky that he's come through at a club like Lincoln, I think, means that he gets so many opportunities when he's young. I mean, what is he, 19, 20 now? He's he's definitely a way better player and way more advanced than I was at that age. And I think it's just important to play games and just to be around senior players, which he has been. And it's definitely something that, looking back, I would have done sooner. It's been documented in the past that, during my career, I didn't really have the opportunities, and, was doubted, etc., which is, like I said, been well documented. But I think the opportunity that these players have now to be at a football club like Lincoln with the best supporters around, fantastic management team, and an environment where they can thrive and they can learn, is perfect for them. And I've no doubt that they'll all take those chances for sure.
I know this is an easy question to say yes to, but did the fans take you aback a little bit in terms of, you are a lone player, and often lone players come into clubs and don't quite connect with fans in some way. But I think Lincoln fans, in my experience this year, have treated you like, and you know what I mean by this, like you're one of their players rather than a lone player there for a while.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it works both ways. I think they wouldn't have taken to me if I wouldn't have taken to the club. And I think, I was at Cheltenham 2 years ago, and I said then I felt like I was a Cheltenham Town player 2 years ago, because I treated it as that, and I didn't treat myself as a lone player. And I think that was always the way I was going to do it this year. And I've been fortunate in the case that I've joined a club that welcomed me with open arms. And I feel like I've been spoilt a little bit in that regard, because, I know that not every football club's like Lincoln. And if I do, I'm going to end up playing for quite a few teams the rest of my career. And I think it's important for me to have that connection with the supporters, because it makes me, makes you feel alive when you're on the pitch. And I think it's not the same for every player, but for me, I think I've always benefited from that, and I always feel more important, which is ultimately our job, to send people home happy on a Saturday. And if I've managed to do that in any way this season, then I've done my job. And for me, I think about it is more than a job, and it's a responsibility. And I feel like I said, if I've given anyone any enjoyment this year, then I've done my job.
Are there any particular games or moments in a red and white striped shirt that sticks to us? I can think of broader games, but I know if I name one, it'll probably be one you were suspended for or something. I'll get it wrong. So, are there any any moments that really stick in your mind?
Well, there's been quite a few. I mean, the early start of the season when we started on fire, that was brilliant because you could feel the momentum from the previous season and sort of the positivity around the club. So, you look at games like Rotherham and Accrington, the opening day was my first experience in a Lincoln shirt, and, just the atmosphere before kickoff was something that I've never experienced. I played in fairly big games before, but in terms of just the intensity that the supporters have at Lincoln is something that I loved. I mean, the Peterborough game is one that people will mention, I know, because don't necessarily like each other as clubs, and I sort of had that extra energy in that game, I think, which I don't know where I got it from, but I mean, I watched the game back a few weeks ago when you were commentating, and definitely probably one of the most enjoyable games for me this year because I love local derbies. I love it when it means so much to the supporters, and for us to win that game, especially in the manner that we did, will probably be my favourite game that I've played for Lincoln for sure. But you could name 3 or 4. Ipswich, Bolton was good. It's just a shame I didn't manage to score a goal in the end, which was disappointing. But I think I ended up with 4 assists and 3 of them should have been goals. So there we go.
Mm. And you've got, obviously, you'll know people playing, I don't know, Welsh under 21 level or playing in, in the shadow squads in Bristol City and other teams. If they came up to you and said, what should I do? I need a break in my career. I guess you would be saying, well, if you get a chance, do something like I did and go to Lincoln, because you just don't know where it can end up.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's probably one of the major takeaways. I mean, from my year this year is that I'll never have a bad word to say about Lincoln. It's the perfect environment for a young player now. And I think anyone who appreciates what the club is about will thrive with it, because it's a club that the supporters will never get on your back. I mean, one of the best memories not the best because it was the worst for sure, but I think being 6-0 down at home to Oxford, and I think some clubs, there'd be no one left in the stadium at the end, but sort of the appreciation that the supporters showed us and sort of the backing that they gave us that day is something that I never forgot throughout the season. And I felt like we always owed them one from that day because it was such a bad day and everything went wrong. And it was such, honestly, I felt horrible for weeks. I had that horrible feeling in my stomach for weeks after that game. But just the support that they gave us, I think, showed what the club is about. And if anyone ever comes up to me and says, oh, Lincoln are interested in signing me, then I think everyone will know what my answer will be, because it will always be a fantastic memory for me this season because I've loved it. And if anyone ever asks me about it, then I will give them that answer.
I know a few Lincoln fans I spoke to said they wondered if the Euros had been played, whether you would still be technically a Lincoln player on the, and it says the clubs, because that would have been the first time Lincoln would have had you. I don't know if you know this, you're the most capped Lincoln City player
Oh,
ever.
really? Well, that's good. That's an achievement, I suppose.
Yeah. So there you go. Chris Ashton will have you in the book for a few years to come. Finally, a message to supporters. I saw some social media, I think last week, you were popping around some people's houses and saying goodbye. And I know you've obviously had a chance to say individually goodbye to some people, but you've got a chance now to get a message to the Imps supporters.
I mean, yeah, it's just a massive thank you, really, because, like I said, it's a club that I've loved playing for. I've loved every minute of it. And from the first moment, you've got people who are trying to support you in any way that they can. That's not just people at the football club. That's just the people around the city who've been a massive help for me and my family. So I know my parents will miss coming up and watching games and staying at the White Hart, because, it's not just me who's loved the city. It's the people around me as well. So yeah, just massively thankful, because like I've always said, it's a year that I'll look back on with only good memories, and who knows, I might get the chance to wear the shirt one day in the future, but we'll wait and see.